not having success is not an option. I have to succeed. It's basically a matter of existence, a survival of my family.
The world's #1 male tennis player.
He's won 24 Grand Slams.
He's in a glittering career.
Novak Djokovic.
You've been through so many injuries, losses.
Oh, he's hurt himself.
What has Novak Djokovic done?
What goes through your mind when you lose?
I just want to be left alone.
What has it taken to become Novak Djokovic?
It's a consistent practice. It's prayer work, mindfulness, meditation, conscious breathing. It requires more responsibility from you on a daily basis to prepare yourself for a biggest battle.
When did you first become aware of that feeling of not being enough?
I kind of get emotional about it because it's still deep inside of me.
Do you feel like in your career you've achieved everything you set out to as a tennis player?
When you reach your 30, you start counting your days to your retirement. I'm 38 this year. How far can I go? How long can I push my own limits?
The #1 health and wellness podcast.
Jay Shetty.
Jay Shetty.
The one, the only Jay Shetty.
Hey everyone, welcome back to On Purpose, the #1 health and wellness podcast in the world. Thanks to each and every one of you who come back every week to listen, learn, and grow. Now, this is an incredible statistic that I'm sharing for the first time. Thanks to you, we are now creating 500 million views every month, not every year, every month. And I'm so grateful that you're part of this community. Today, I get to welcome back a guest who has been a big part of making that possible for me. I'm grateful to him. I'm indebted to him because he believed in the mission of On Purpose even before many people did, or any people did. Before this podcast was even out, he allowed me the gracious kindness to go and interview him and release as the second episode of all time. Welcoming back to On Purpose, I'm so excited to have my friend, the incredible human, Novak Djokovic. Novak.
Thank you, Jay.
You are, do you know what? I'm so grateful to have you back and my heart is so full because you were one of those rare people that had seen one of my first ever videos. We'd reached out, we'd connected, we were talking a lot at the time. You were going through a really fascinating place in your career. You were recovering from an injury.
Right.
It was a different mindset. You were just on the cusp of becoming the greatest of all time. And you took a chance on me in so many ways. And I'm eternally indebted and grateful to you for that. So thank you for coming on then and coming back now.
Jay, thank you. It's a great pleasure to see you again and to be able to talk to you. Thank you for kind words in introduction and as well. Reflecting on our first conversation in 2019, I don't think I took a chance because we talked about it just before we started officially recording. You know, when you are connected with yourself and with your emotions, and when you feel someone deeply and look in someone's eyes and you understand instantly with your instinct, with your intuition, whether this person thinks good or thinks bad or has the right intention, has the heart at the right place. So I could see that from the first moment with you. And that's where I felt the connection. And even though we haven't seen each other for a few years, you know, I'm just so glad that we're able to connect now. And you led me through the list of all the guests that you had in the last almost 300 episodes in the last 5 years. And I couldn't be happier for you and for your wife and for your entire team. Amazing.
Thank you, man. And it's you gave me my first Wimbledon experience. I got to see you play on center court.
How was that?
It was amazing. I mean, are you kidding me? It was like, and you crushed, you won, obviously. But it was just such a brilliant experience to see you play after getting to understand your psychology. And I think that's what I've respected about you over time, that you've really worked hard on your internal game as much as your external game. And I think you're one of those few rare athletes that have raised the consciousness by working on your own consciousness. So today I want to dive deep into that. And I want to dive right in. I wanted to start by asking you, like, what has it taken to become Novak Djokovic? Like, what has it actually taken to become you internally?
You know, you mentioned that I took a lot of the time and attention to dedicate myself to the internal work. And, you know, I've been blessed and really lucky in a certain way to be surrounded with certain people at the very early stages of my career and my life that have directed me into this direction of self-care, of holistic approach, of multidisciplinary approach to the preparation, to the prevention, to the recovery, both physical, mental, emotional. And at that time, because I was so young, I didn't understand that. And it didn't need to be explained to me in depth at that point. I trusted, my tennis mother, as I like to call her. She passed away 13 years ago, but she was the one that really introduced this holistic concept to me. I was going, obviously to school, and then I was only 9 years old and 9, 10, and I was training with her maybe 2 or 3 times a week individually, tennis, and then I would have group sessions, and my parents were trusting her enough to allow her to participate directly into my upbringing, basically. So she also educated me off the tennis court as well. So she took me very often, at least 2 times per week, to her house, where we would look at the tapes of all the greats, both male and female tennis players. That's where my impersonation started. People, still to this day ask me, when are you going to do the impersonations? And, I haven't done it. I've done it early in my career, and it was fun. It was viral and people liked it. And then I received a little bit of an evil looks in the locker room, and I kind of felt like, maybe I'm stepping over the line. So that's why I stopped. But that's where it started. And I was like, I was really trying to adapt all of the great things that I could see. And I have a kind of a photogenic memory, and I'm a very visual person. And that was something that was kind of expected, that is kind of common as well, what you do with kids, or with young athletes, right? You watch videotapes, you try to analyze, you try to talk. But then she had me listen to classical music, and she said, it's very important that you do that almost on a daily basis. Listen to classical music while you are writing your journal, while you are, preparing for bed, or any time of the day, but particularly those times. And, I liked it. I didn't understand the purpose of it, but, I liked it. And so we would look at the tapes and we would listen to this music, and then we would read poetry. And then we would do a visualization practice. At that time, it was not presented to me as such, but she would just say in a very simple way that would be understood by a boy, a 10-year-old boy, just close your eyes and think about how you want to play tennis, and think about when you're at your happiest. And so it started at a very early age. And I'm so eternally grateful to her for instilling this in me and teaching me, how to see life, basically, and understand that tennis is not, as an individual sport, of course, is also different because you don't have anyone to replace you if something goes bad, during the match. You have to figure out a way. So I think it requires more responsibility from you on a daily basis to prepare yourself for a biggest battle, internally and also externally, of course, with your opponent and with everything that is happening around. But, so it taught me to really understand that tennis is not only about hitting a tennis ball over the net and counting score and dreaming about these achievements and winning Wimbledon as our holy grail of tennis, but it's more than that. And I can use tennis as a platform to evolve into a better human being. At that point, I didn't understand that. But then as I was growing older and becoming more mature, I started to understand the importance of doing all of these practices. And I started to expand on each of these topics that I was going through with her. And then, I started going into yoga. I started going into the movement, into Christianity, Orthodox Christian. I'm very proud of my religion, but at the same time, I'm very open to, embrace anything that can teach me, from other religions and from the spirituality as a whole. So I'm very curious by nature. So I was really always looking for new ways to improve myself and improve my life on this planet, And I was very lucky to basically have that space also from my parents. It's a kind of a self-discovery through the self-care, through tennis really consumed most of my life. Still does, not to that extent, of course. I have 2 kids, I have family and other businesses and other things that interest me. So I'm balancing right now between tennis and the other stuff, and I'm kind of making that transition slowly. I still play professional tennis and I still experience my worst self on the court and my best self. And so going back to your comment at the beginning where you said, you're one of the athletes that really have immersed himself into the spirituality, into understanding the holistic approach and so forth, and the mental health, I would say yes, but I'm still surprising and shocking myself on how much I actually need to still work on that. And I still, quote unquote, don't know enough about that world. And it was really hard for me to accept that. I thought, since 10, I basically started working on that and growing the foundation. But it has evolved and has transformed so much for me in terms of how I see myself, how I see the world. And I thought, maybe when I was at the peak of my career and, I felt like I'm unbeatable and I feel like I could do anything. I kind of walking on the water. We all experience that in our own lives in a certain way, and it's a great feeling. But then the ego takes you places where it's hard to come back from. And maybe you shouldn't come back from that. Maybe you're trying to find a balance, find the optimal measure that really works for you. But it took me time to really accept the fact that what I have learned, what I have mastered, and what I'm doing on a daily basis for the last 20 years or more is not necessarily a guarantee that I'll always find a way and that will always work for me in this particular time of my life and circumstances that I'm facing. So that's a huge revelation for me and I'm still trying to get a grasp on it and understand all of these factors that are in play that are challenging me on a daily basis. And when I talk from this perspective, it's a beautiful journey that I'm trying to embrace. But when you are immersed in the dark moment, it's kind of hard to really get out of that.
Yeah, no, I love what you're saying because in the Gita, the ancient text of India, it's spoken on a battlefield. And the idea is that you're always on a battlefield. And as you said, on the battlefield, you see the best of yourself and the worst of yourself. And often people said that to me when I moved to LA. Everyone's like, why do you want to be in LA? There's so much materialism. There's so much, illusion here. And I said, well, actually, I feel like I'm on the battlefield here. So I see the best of myself and I see the worst of myself. And the worst of myself reminds me to keep going and to keep working on myself. And the best of myself allows me to share my message with the biggest megaphone in the world. And so it's that dichotomy of actually when you're looking for spiritual growth, you want to be in a place that reminds you of your weaknesses as much as your strength. Because if you were only reminded of your strength, you'd just have your ego. And if you were only reminded of your weaknesses, well, then you would be depressed or disheartened.
I can instantly see the mistake when I actually say it's my coach's fault or it's my physio's fault or my fitness coach's fault or it's whoever's fault for me losing a match or me playing this way. So I always remind myself, hey, take the responsibility in your hands, take the means in your hands. You are in control of your life. I really would love my children to be able to be okay with being bored because that's the time when you're actually most creative, or that's the time when you can manage your thoughts and everything that you have been suppressing by distracting yourself with phone, with whatever it is. You cannot convince me that there's a single person in this planet, even the monk in Tibet, that is meditating 24/7, or an Orthodox Christian priest in a holy island in Greece that is 24/7 praying, that is not experiencing some negative thoughts.
You've probably been hearing about AI everywhere. And we all need to be mindful of the tools we trust in this new chapter of technology. Claude is the if you know AI assistant that just feels different. While other AIs often sound like robots, Claude has been created with special research that informs its character, meaning that Claude just gets it when it comes to empathy and emotional intelligence. That's why millions of people are turning to Claude for parenting tips, dating advice, mindful habits like journaling, budgeting, and so much more. Claude has been thoughtfully crafted by Anthropic and its team of researchers whose mission is to design the most capable and secure systems that place people at the center. You can try Claude for free at any time and for a special offer on premium capabilities with Claude Pro. Head to claude.ai/purpose. That's CLAUDE.ai/purpose. Do you feel like in your career you've achieved everything you set out to as a tennis player?
Yes, and more than that. And at the same time, I still want to do more. And I know that that comes in a big part from a good place, meaning from a place of purpose, inspiration, motivation, love for the sport, passion for the sport, passion to make people happy when they watch me. If I'm doing that, and I have a feeling that I am, by still actively being on the tennis tour and having my tennis career, active tennis career, I'm still spreading that light by playing tennis and inspiring younger generations. That's something that comes from a good heart, a good place. But what comes from maybe let's say, not necessarily a bad place, but less of a good place, I have identified that as well, is my feeling of not being enough. And that goes back to my very, very beginning of my life and my relationship, particularly with my father, and not doing enough, not being good enough, et cetera, et cetera. So now that I'm talking about it, I kind of get emotional about it because it's still deep inside of me. And it's kind of the battle that I also go through often, because a lot of people, even closest people in my life, ask me, what more do you want? You have achieved everything. What do you want? Why do you keep going? And I tell them the good part that I told you, that I still really strongly feel it's inside of me. And I feel like as long as I have the capacity or ability to compete for the biggest titles in my sport, I want to keep going. And also partly the part that I didn't mention that inspires me to keep going is to test my limits mentally and physically. Because when I was starting to break through into professional tennis, I remember when you reach your 30, you start counting your days to your retirement. Like after 30, that's it pretty much. Even though there were some exceptions, like Jimmy Connors, the legend of our game, he played, I think, semifinals or finals of US Open when he was 40, and still dominating the tour. So there were very few exceptions. Nowadays it's different. Why? Because I think the care for the body has improved so much. I mean, now not only top 10 or 15 guys or girls on the tour have like multiple people in their squad to take care of them. You have top 50 people that are taking care of them. It's due to the improvement, of course, of the conditions for the players, and we earn more across the board. So it allows you to hire more people that would take care of your body. And I think that it's also a kind of a curiosity from my side. How far can I go? I'm 38 this year. How long can I push my own limits? And I don't feel like I do have limits. And I feel like the limits are normally constructs in our mind. I've seen the episode you did with Brian Johnson the other day. And then he talked about, he's, by a lot of people's opinion, very extreme. But, he dedicated his own entire life to getting the data and understanding what are the best conditions for the longest living life that he can have for himself, which I think is something that is admirable. And, I give him huge credit for that. And I understand, because as a professional athlete, the care for your body and your mind and the devotion to the daily habits is so tough, because when you want to change a certain habit, science says it takes at least 21 days, right? For the brain to start growing, new neurons that are reprogramming. But if you don't have the right environment, that's going to be very, very challenging. So that was also one of the things that I wanted to reflect on. And your question is, the environment is the one that can be very stimulative to you. It can be really supportive, or it can be pulling you down. So it's super important, even though we always encourage ourselves to be independent in terms of what we do, what we eat, how we sleep, how we lead our lives and what we do and how we can live the best version of our lives possible. But at the same time, we are social beings. Mm-hmm. We are very tribal beings. And even if it's the smallest community, we still want to belong to that community. We still want this community to support us, even if it's one person or two. But it's super important in the end of the day because, making tough choices, these are tough choices because society, when you go out there, super majority of the places where you go to eat or people that you see, it's a kind of a vicious cycle and they lead their life in a certain way that maybe doesn't coincide or correspond to your choices that you want to make, the new choices or maybe the new changes. So it's really hard, living in the big city and deciding you want to go through transformational journey on a daily basis. We're being exposed to something that is contrary to what you're trying to achieve. I feel like it's reinventing yourself constantly. For me, I've had this kind of upbringing, had the great foundation, and I've achieved incredible things. I was dreaming of becoming number one in the world and becoming a Wimbledon champion. And that was my dream. I achieved that dream within 2 days. I won Wimbledon and at the same day became number one in the world in 2011 in front of my family, in front of President of Serbia who was there. I mean, it was with the welcoming of hundreds of thousands of people on the way back. It's just, once in a lifetime type of experience. And when you do something for the first time, obviously that big, it's just like you're flying to the moon. I mean, you're not... it's a kind of an out of body experience. But then I felt like I had to set new goals. And because I was, at the time, 2011, I was 23 years old, 24. So, okay, what do I do next? I feel like I'm at, peak of my powers and I want to, so then I want to win multiple slams. Then I want to win all slams at once. Then I want to win gold medal for my country. Then I want to make history and so forth, so forth. So I think goal-oriented mind, particularly in sports, but I also in business or anything really, I think is super important because the clarity from my experience is something that is essential to have also peace of mind and to have a calm heart that you know what you're doing and that you set your goals, your short-term goals, your long-term goals, and you know exactly the strategy that you need to implement to achieve them. And you surround yourself with the people who are supporting you, but also people who are telling you what you don't want to hear, giving you constructive criticism or maybe giving you non-constructive criticism and then putting you very down. But that's also part of the journey. It's also learning how to get up like a phoenix and rise and try to develop a thick skin, so to say. So it's a constant process, really. I don't see myself fully satisfied, if that's maybe a shorter answer, because I have that part of me which is like, I think I can still do more. But the other side of me is like, of course, I'm happy and I'm proud. And in a way, I can't wait one day for me to reflect on everything. But while I'm still in my active career, I don't have time. Tennis has the longest season of all sports. Starts January, ends almost end of November. And of course, I earn my right in a way to be selective with tournaments where I play. So that's what I'm doing. I'm not playing as much. I'm focusing on the big ones. And I'm trying to incorporate all of these other things inside of my career and basically expand the platform and use my voice for other things than just the tennis court. And I'm, super blessed to be in the position that I am. But as I said, it's a constant journey and process.
Yeah, I really appreciate you being honest about your experience with your father, because I think that pretty much anyone who goes off to do something successful externally, all of us and everyone was channeling some sort of internal inadequacy or an internal feeling of not being enough, as you said. And I wanted to ask, when did you first become aware of that you had that feeling of not being enough?
Right.
And how have you helped that evolve in the healthiest way possible? What has been that journey of almost having to live with it because it's there, but not letting it be your guiding light?
Well, you're right. It makes sense because I think if you use it as the right fuel, it can actually serve as a great motivating factor, right? It can push you, it can, stimulate you to extract the most amount of necessary energy on a daily basis to achieve your goals and to basically live your dream. I think for me, it started really as something that was inevitable as a part of the environment that I was in. I touched upon that a little bit in our conversation. 5-6 years ago, my upbringing with several wars and sanctions and embargo and poverty and everything. So, from a very young age, I was basically forced to mature very quickly because I'm a oldest of the 3 brothers. I have 2 younger brothers. So as an oldest son to my father, I was basically kind of in a position where I had to be informed very early on, particularly the age of 11, 12, when we had that bombing and the war and sanctions, that state that we are in as a family or as people of my country, the situation, the circumstances, my father had to bring it forward to me in a very clear and mature way. So, one of the most impactful moments of my upbringing and my childhood is when he brought 10 Deutschmarks, and I've said this story many times, which is equivalent to $10. And he said, this is all we got for our family of 5, is living in a super small apartment. That's where it hit me. It was like, okay, now I have to take the means in my hands as a 12-year-old boy in whatever way I can. At least what I can do is support my mother, maybe from some of the burden that she has during the day of taking care of my younger brothers. And that's where it also hit me that not having success is not an option. Like, I have to succeed. It's basically a matter of existence, a survival of my family. So I think it started there. And then over the years, it has obviously transformed or evolved into different kind of form. But I think that, and also my relationship with my father, oftentimes because of maybe lack of patience of my father or of people around, because everyone saw that I have a talent. I was coming from Serbia that had no tennis tradition, no tennis culture. We are a nation of team sports. We are definitely a sporting nation. We love sports, but team sports. And at that point, during 90s, it was about survival. People were watching sports, but there was not much support for the sports. It was particularly not tennis, a very expensive sport at the time. I chose the most difficult sport for my parents in most difficult time for our nation and for my family. So oftentimes I wouldn't travel because we didn't have money. And then, obviously, as you can imagine, Tennis Federation didn't have, money to support me. So my father had to go and beg. And then he was also borrowing money from, unfortunately, even some criminals at the time during 90s. And then they would tell him, it's funny story right now, but at the time it wasn't funny, particularly for him. But, he would go and he said, first time I was going to go to United States to play, I was 15 years old. I was going to play like big junior events here, like Prince Cup and Orange Bowl. They're the biggest ones under 16 and under 18. And also, more importantly, I was going with my father, hopefully to get the sponsorship or, get recruited by one of the big agencies, IMGs or whatever. So he went for us for money because we didn't have. So he went to us for $5,000. And so these criminal people that you could borrow money from because banks obviously would not give it to you. And then they said, he asked them, how much are you in rush? And he's like, listen, I'm asking this money from you because of my son. He's playing tennis. We're going in America. I'll return this money within whatever they agreed on, 1 or 2 months, whatever it is, 3 months. He says interest rate was 15%, but because you are in rush, it's 25. So my father was like, okay, I'll take it because I have no other option. So, and I can only imagine the stress that he was going through and trying to return this money where people were really car chasing him, shootings in our capital town, stuff that my father went through, to really not only survive himself, but to actually allow all of us to live and protect us and to allow me to live my dream and to play the most expensive sport at the time for my country is something that I'm eternally indebted. I cannot, there's no money or there's nothing that can return the favor, so to say. So of course, my father is always my hero for that and my champion. But, feeling of not enough because of that stress and what things that he was going through. And then, it was hard because he was giving me also a hard time if I wouldn't play well. And it's like, and then I understood, but at the same time, I was afraid. I knew what I have to do, but it's hard for me to deliver it when it's like, okay, you need to win no matter what type of situation. He wasn't telling me that, but that's how it felt. And it felt like that for years. So that's why I say that the success that I have achieved is not only due to my father or my parents or myself, it's also the divine higher force. I strongly believe that there was an intervention, and there still is. There's higher forces in power that were helping me in some of the most difficult moments, in my family as well. I am a man of faith, and I really truly believe in God and the higher spiritual force that intervenes in the most difficult moments if you open your heart, if you pray, and if you believe in it. So I felt it on my own skin. Jay, to be honest, I really don't know how I won certain matches. I cannot explain it. Even with my team, after I would finish a Grand Slam final against Roger Federer in 2019 Wimbledon, when he was a far better player, I saved some match points and I came off the court. All stats were going his way. I won the match. And I just said, and I wasn't playing well. I wasn't feeling well on the court. And I was just like struggling and scrambling and trying to stay out there, stay alive. And I won in the end in one of the most epic finals in history of tennis. And then, I told to my parents and my family and my team, I said, and my wife, I said, I don't know how I won this match. I have no idea. At the same time, I do know deep inside that there's that connection happening, and that there's also that help. So there's a mix of things. It's really hard to explain. Sometimes there's this divine power that really, if you allow it, if you believe it, that really helps you come out of a trouble and achieve things.
What has been your point of connection or practice with that higher power that keeps you connected? What's been that for you? There's so many different traditions and different methods. What's been the method for you that you find, especially in those moments, that you're able to tap in? Because I find that if you're able to tap in really difficult times, it means you're doing something in good times, because it doesn't just suddenly turn on when you need it. So what has been your particular practice, method, system, or theory that's kept you connected?
You hit the nail with that one. It's a consistent practice. So it's prayer work, mindfulness, meditation, conscious breathing, visualization, presence, basically many other things as well that just NLP, or, there's a lot of different techniques that I have been practicing and trialing always with myself before I would recommend it to someone else. And over the years, I've developed my own formula that changes depending on the feeling, depending on whether I'm on the court, whether I'm at home, what practice, whatever it is that I'm doing. But I try to do it when, nobody's watching. And sometimes I verbalize things. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I write things down. Sometimes I just internalize. It just depends. But I think most importantly in the end is that you're doing something. I'm actually reading this book. One of the books that I'm reading currently is, The Power of Surrendering and Letting Go. Mm-hmm. It is an amazing book for me at the moment because of my upbringing, because of my character, and because of my life story, hard for me to let go. It's hard for me to surrender unless it's to the higher power. But I'm still working on how to surrender and let go of certain things in a relationship with close ones, or my relationship with the tennis, or, if I lose a match or a tournament, if I go through a crisis period, and how to not hold something that pulls me down, or regret, or, it's a constant work. But I feel like if you devote the time on a daily basis, whatever works for you. You had some of the most amazing guests on your show that talked about, from neuroscientists to doctors, nutritionists, and talked about the healthy habits. So I don't want to be talking as them, as I'm not an expert, but in my field, or so to say, in my own life and experience, I feel like I'm an expert because I have tried and developed so many different things over the last 30 years. And I know what works and what doesn't. in a way. But going back to the very beginning of the conversation, it's not, again, a guarantee that it will keep on working to the rest of my life. But I know what will is my dedicated time in a day to this practice. Mental practice, physical practice, of course, activity, practice that I'm doing in the gym, outside on tennis court, or when I'm not training, I still do stuff. I still do some yoga practice. I still do stretching. I still do breathing. I love the Qigong and the Chinese traditional medicine or Chinese tradition practices. I think they're super good and important that you can do even in your chair. There's ways, and it's incredible nowadays in internet. And I mean, there's access to incredible things. All it takes is a willpower to do it and a desire to say, okay, I'm consciously making this decision to change my life for better. And I'm going to start with small steps, super important. It's hard. You have so much judgment in this society, in this world, right? It's really hard for people. As we talked about the environment, as much as effort you're putting in, and then you come with your friends or whatever, with your family members, and then they start to judge you because you're starting to act weird, because you're not normal, you're not conforming to the norms of the society, whatever they are, because it's quite relative, we're all different. But, the norms of society are not really healthy ones. Otherwise, we wouldn't be where we are as a world ecosystem as a whole, and as people, and what we are doing to our planet, etc. There's a lot of awakening happening, and it's great to see that change. But it's not easy for people, and I understand that. And it's okay not to feel okay. We heard that many times as well. And sometimes, as I said, accepting and embracing for me and letting go of the fact that I cannot find a solution to something that happens in my brain, in my mind, is also fine. Mm-hmm. Of being in a dark place for as long as it requires is also a humane thing. It's also part of our life. I can see there's also a narrative that I don't really necessarily like or support in our, let's say, wellness, mindfulness space, well-being space, where it's presented by certain people in such way that you can only think positive thoughts and there's no room for negative thoughts. That, every picture or video they post online is smiling, it's great life, and so forth. I mean, that's not possible, right? I mean, you cannot convince me that there's a single person in this planet, even the monk in Tibet, that is meditating 24/7, or an Orthodox Christian priest in a holy island in Greece that is 24/7 praying, peace, isolated in the cave, that is not experiencing some negative thoughts. And I always go back to what one of my friends told me, that he's also mental coach, and I worked with him for years. And one of his teachers is Zen Buddhism teachers, and he goes to the temple in France often to his teacher. And he asked him in one of the first times that he was there doing retreats and spending time at the temple, he says, how are you so calm? How is it that nothing really ravels you or unsettles you? Like, you're always so serene. You don't have any negative thoughts. And he said, the answer from the teacher is that, he says, it's not true. He says, I probably have more negative thoughts and more challenging thoughts and emotions than you have. The difference between you and me is my training and my ability to not stay in that state and in that emotion for a long time. So I stay in it for seconds, and you stay in it for who knows.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think there's true wisdom in that.
Yes.
And it's all about practice. Everything. I mean, brain is a muscle like any other. Even consciousness that comes naturally to us. I mean, we are conscious spiritual beings. We are souls on this planet, in this body. But in order for us to connect with our true self, we need to go through these layers, the constructs of the society that has developed us in a way, has shaped us. And that requires practice on a daily basis. And that's not easy. Look, it's not easy not switching on your phone or your TV the first thing in the morning, but doing something that is maybe not as healthy, but being devoted to that practice, or, during the day, having that little 1, 2, 5, 10, 20 minute rest time and comprehension time. It's not easy to do that. especially for people that didn't develop that kind of habit. It doesn't come naturally. I mean, even though I don't like giving advices, we talked about it, but I like to share something that works as a suggestion, something that works extremely well for me. And this is crazy that even in the 21st century, we are even talking about this as a hack. It should be like an everyday thing, that it's most natural thing is to spend time in nature. Listen to the birds chirping, listen to the wind, feel if you're by seaside or oceanside, walk by the water or any water or a pond or lake, or just be without a phone and in nature. Let the nature do its job and heal you. And there's so much more power to that than we actually think. And I felt like in the darkest moments when I really don't want to do any of these techniques or any of the time indoors, I just go out. And I just go out and preferably walk uphill, because I feel like when you walk uphill, your heart rate raises, obviously. And because of that effort, you're even more present. So even less time for your thoughts to consume you. So you're like fully present. And then when you get to a certain point high at the top, you feel good about yourself because you've done something. You're in the nature, you're dedicated time to yourself. So I feel like that's super powerful, and it's oftentimes very underestimated.
The reason why I love hearing about your practices is just because I think an athlete's mind is one of the most unique places on earth, because when you're dealing with extremes every day,
right,
and every week, and both extremes of being number one and then losing a game, and everything that goes on, the toolkit you have is one of the most versatile toolkits. And that's why I asked that question, was just to understand what you do. I was going to ask you, like, I feel like one of the most challenging things, and you probably remember this, when you were the new kid on the block and you're playing all the legends, and today you're the legend and you're playing the new kids on the block. And it must be such a fascinating experience to go through. And when you're talking about the power of letting go and the power of surrender,
right,
I wanted you to talk to us about that. Like, what did it feel like when you were the new kid on the block and you were playing your legends that you looked up to, and now you're the legend, you're the GOAT, you're the number one, playing the new kids on the block? Like, what does that mentally look like?
It's a completely different feeling, obviously, and different perspective. I mean, when you're a teenager coming up, and then you're in a dreamland when you are just sharing a locker room with the legends of the game, or the guys that you look up to, your biggest rivals. They're becoming your biggest rivals later on, but at that point they're your heroes. They're like, my gosh, I mean, these guys, I've seen them on the TV, and now
Who was that for you at that time?
I mean, look, my idol growing up was Pete Sampras, and even